Thank you very much. Hello everyone, this is Rick with XYZ Modeling and Graphics. Today we're going to be looking at issue number 58, and be sure to stick around for the end of this video for my discussion on dry transfer decals. So for expedience sake, we are going to jump straight to the build here. Today we're working on the upper port engine mount, as well as the LED jumper wiring, getting that all into place. I got things sped up a little bit here, don't worry, I'm going to slow it back down. Just this process of opening up all the screws and parts and pieces, I just felt I needed to sort of accelerate the time a little bit here. Now this is a pretty simple issue, but it is a little bit time consuming. I was going at a moderate pace. It took me about 35-40 minutes to complete it. So we do have some new comments to go over today, and now I will get to those here in a little bit. Right now we're going to be starting off by adding our reinforcement bracing to the wing. Getting those pieces into place here. Now we all realize the importance of this reinforcement, and by now we've certainly understand the importance of using the correct screws in this process. And again, this is all familiar territory. None of you should be surprised by anything you see here. And we will be celebrating here shortly when we complete this wing. I know I will be. But it is nice to have some time and opportunity to go over some of the comments that I've received. I've only gotten a few here since my last video, but I do appreciate them very much. And it looks like I picked up a few new subscribers, which I also greatly appreciate. One of my new subscribers is Jose Naro, and he says, "Greetings from Monterrey, Mexico. Bienvenido, mi canal, mi amigo." I greatly appreciate you. I hope I said that right. My Spanish isn't that great. Jose also says that he is certainly interested in my decals video, and I hope so. I've got a couple other comments regarding the decals, and I will be happy to go over that, and we'll go through that together. This is new to me. I've never done the DIY version of this, but I'm going to give it a shot versus going out to a private company that does these. But we'll explain all that at the end of the video. So thank you, Jose. Appreciate it. I know I didn't pronounce your last name right. Got those two R's there. I cannot roll my R's. I can't do it. It sounds ridiculous when I try, so forgive me. Okay, so next up here is Michael Mitchell. Hello, Michael. He says, I don't know if it's a preference to have the flickering LEDs for the engine, but the filming miniatures had static lights, seeing as they were using regular light bulbs to light the engines for the movies. And he also says, as for the core sec, I think they may have used red or orange for the Starfighter paint schemes. Or you can change things with the paint scheme to make Wedge's X-Wing or Big's X-Wing. Just change the number of stripes. Yeah, absolutely, Michael. I agree with you on all counts there. As far as the core sec comment, them using red and orange, you could be right. The only picture that I saw of that ship was the one that I've displayed earlier that had the bare metal paint scheme with the green markings. And green just happens to be my favorite color. I really like that. It spoke to me. So I will still be going with the green. Yeah, I mean, as far as keeping things accurate to the film, I just don't see the absolute importance of that with this model, because it isn't true to any scale that that was produced, and my good buddy Martin makes a point about that, which I'll go over here in a little bit. But I'm just gonna do it the way I want to do it, and I certainly encourage everyone to do the same. If you want to try to make them close to the original models, that, you know, that's certainly your prerogative. But you know, I just like that green look on the bare metal paint scheme, so that's kind of the direction I'm going to go. As far as the flickering LEDs, I do agree with you there too. It was a static light being used, but I've seen the flickering LEDs in other models like the Colonial Vipers from Battlestar Galactica, and I just think they look really good just sitting there. You know, they look a little bit more powerful, and I don't know, I just kind of like it. So anyway, thanks, Michael. I appreciate the comment, and I look forward to seeing the finished result of your ship when you have completed it. So let's go ahead and check in where we're at here. Screwing in the bracing into the wing still. A little bit of a tedious process. Now, we're using the number 4 screws here. I don't know about you guys, but I've been having some difficulty with this screw size. I'm not sure what the problem is. They seem to want to slip off the head as I screw them in, and they, for some reason, they just don't feel like they're seating very well. So maybe some of you guys can let me know if you're having a similar problem. But it takes a little bit more effort to get these in than the other screws, and I just don't understand why. But I do fight through it and get those in. But I don't know what's more boring, watching paint dry or watching me screw in little number 4 screws. So thank God we've got more comments to talk about here. We're going to go to Larry Goodnight. Hey, Larry. He says, "Hi, Rick. I'm looking forward to seeing your decal set. Thank you. Stick around after this video, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I believe the final wing is not done until issue 68. Yes, I know. I am not thrilled about that. But I did receive word that my next month's subscription is on its way. But there's one thing this process has taught me is exercising patience. So, you know, despite the fact that we're not going to be completing it, at least I know we're a little bit closer to the end goal here. So thanks, Larry, for pointing that out to me. On the CA issue, I just don't want to be hearing little pieces rattling around later on. Hey, that's my line, man. Yeah, that's exactly what concerned me, especially with those little hidden interior pieces, is that if they did ever come loose, that they would just be rattling around in there and drive you crazy. So we are in total agreement there, buddy. He also says that he thinks the engine lights should have a flicker to them, and that he's going to wait and see if Deagostini has something figured out into their circuit board for that. But I don't. He says not likely, I know, and yeah, I don't believe that's going to happen. Otherwise, he'll do it himself with a Arduino Mini. And, you know, I might as well. I know I'm going to end up having to do something with a cockpit anyway, so you might as well figure something out for the lights or the engine lights as well. So that should be a pretty simple sketch in Arduino. So you and I will be tackling that. Maybe we could share the code with one another or whoever else is interested out there. He also says that he will, instead of the battery pack, he'd be using a hardwired power supply since his is going to be set into a diorama. Yeah, I didn't mean for you to to use the battery pack itself. I was just thinking that the little connector that they had specifically for the R2's foot could be spliced into a permanent power supply, whichever. Was probably like a 9-volt source or something. I don't know what they're going to be using, but I thought maybe that might be handy because you can recess that into the floor or something and have that contact point. But as always, you know, it's your model. How to do with it what you will, my friend. And he says mahalo and thank you to Larry. I appreciate it. Okay, where are we at here? All right. Okay, we are preparing to put our wiring, our jumper wiring for the cannon base into position. So, you know, we start off here at the contact point and sort of thread things around. And I like to anchor them along the edges of the interior framework here. And as usual, you know, just be careful that you don't accidentally puncture the insulation of this wire and create a short circuit that would prevent your LEDs from lighting up or to lose its continuity altogether. But as long as you're delicate in this process, you should be successful. And of course, there's always the lighting test at the end that will confirm that there is no damage to this little circuit that we're creating here. There's really no special trick to it. Just carefully anchor these along. You know, wherever there's a turn in the wire is the best place to do that. So I'm sure, you know, everybody that's out there has done it 3 times before. The 4th time shouldn't be any more challenging. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to speed things up a little bit in this process here of threading the wiring through. And let's get to our last comment, Martin Futter. Hello, Martin. I saved you for last because you had the most to say here. He says, Mr. Hutt, thanks for looking at the Falcon's parts site, and haha, no, I don't work for them, but I wish I did. Okay, just was just curious about that because it was the second time you had mentioned them. He says that he subscribed to Build the Millennium Falcon a few years back, and during the forum discussions of the Falcon Parts Company was mentioned along with shapeways to help builders get a more screen accurate build. Yes, I knew of the shapeways parts, but I wasn't aware of the Falcon parts. Shapeways did a really good job. Most of my interior came from those, including the floor, pretty much everything except the walls and some of the piping. They did a really good job there. So he also goes on to say Deagostini got their fingers burnt a lot for advertising of a screen accurate filming miniature when it clearly lacked. And yes, you are absolutely right. There were things about the Millennium Falcon that they put out there that did not represent the true filming miniature, at least the outside of it. Obviously the interior was sorely lacking as well. So but he says with the X-Wing release, they're not advertising it as a screen accurate model. So his theory is so that they could possibly avoid them having to come up with after the fact type modifications to bring it to film accuracy. That's probably true, Martin. I don't know if that's fact or not, but I would not be surprised. If they're claiming that this model is not film accurate, then why the heck should they feel the need to correct themselves on some of the details of this model? And if I remember correctly, there was a little bit on the side of the ship that wasn't quite right with the Millennium Falcon, as well as the cockpit, or the outer cockpit area. I remember getting a couple of changes there. one of the things I left out of the Millennium Falcon was the clear plastic pieces that were supposed to be the windows. I left those out completely, and that supposedly was true to the filming miniature as well. So, plus it made it look a lot less like a toy. But he also says, let's see, Deagostini did some market research during the Falcon build, and an X-Wing hangar diorama was looked at as a subscription exclusive, and which those open panels with guys working in them would make a lot more sense. They have cockpits for various craft and could only be a matter of time before an expensive replacement wings its way. that's a good one. Looking forward to your next video, and dry rub transfers sound intriguing. Thank you very much. I seem to have struck a chord with some of you guys regarding these dry rub or dry transfer decals, and I'll give you some examples of that here pretty soon at the end of this video. And he asked me about the color squadron scheme for your X-Wing. Well, like I said to Michael, the color I chose was based on that picture that I found, and like I said, green just happens to be my favorite color, and it just looked like something I would like to see on display, and I think it'll turn out pretty good, despite the fact that they may not have used green. According to Michael, he says that red or orange could have been the more accurate of those two. But believe me, of all my friends that will eventually see this finished model, none of them are going to know or care. So anyway, I'm still working on where I'm going to even display this thing. I'm starting to run out of room. But he ends by saying, if I'm ever in the UK, he'll buy me some fish and chips. That sounds great, man. I love it. And thank you very much, Martin. I appreciate your input. So, okay, we are winding down here. We've just finished placing the cover over the wire exit port there on the edge of the wing. And the last thing to do is to place the little plastic screw hole covers, which, you know, when you're cutting them out of the sprue, there's obviously going to be a little bit of the sprue portion still attached to it, so I like to clean that up a little bit so that so they all sit in there nice and cleanly. Not too much trouble. These things fit right into place. And they did give us 4 of them, although we only need 3. So just in case you happen to drop one into your shag carpet, you'll have a spare one at the ready. These fit nicely into place. Now, of course, after I paint this, these are going to sort of disappear and be very difficult to ever get back into if I need to, but my hope is that that will never be necessary. I don't have any kids or pets or anything like that running around anymore these days, so the likelihood of these getting disturbed and knocked out of place are pretty slim. But for those of you who have children or pets or, I don't know, clumsy spouses that might disturb this model, hopefully these things will remain there without the assistance of CA glue. And that wraps it up. That completes issue number 58. And here's a picture of our finished product. All right, everybody. let's chat about dry transfer decals. So what are dry transfer decals? Well, those are the types of decals that you put into position by simply rubbing the back of the transfer adhesive to the object that you're transferring the detail to, as opposed to water slide decals, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. A little bit more difficult to work with, plus there's some additional like post-processing that you need to do with water slide decals to get them to look painted on. In this photograph, you see the parallel lines that are randomly dispersed along the top portion of the model. These are all dry transfer decals that I created in order to get them looking as precise as possible. And here is another example of a dry transfer decal that I created that represents the little marking on top of the cockpit that you didn't see in the Empire Strikes Back version of this Millennium Falcon. It was in the New Hope and I think the recent movies too, but I like that little detail, so I went ahead and added it to my Empire Strikes Back version, the Deagostini version. And again, here are some additional markings that are present on the filming miniature that were referenced in the painting reference portions of the Millennium Falcon magazines. And basically just created these in AutoCAD, of course, to scale according to the dimensions of the model so that I was ensured of a good fit. And basically drew them up and in a fashion similar to what you see here. Just made a bunch of little circles where the bottom portion of the model had a lot of these little reddish orange circles, and of course you've got the red square shapes, just basic shapes that I created that I knew I would want to add to the model. So after I completed that, I sent them off to a company called Transfer.com, and as you can see here, you send them in and they will create the decals for you and ship them back to you, and here they claim within 24 hours. So it was a little spendy, but it was worth it in my opinion. I received the dry rub transfer decals and began to apply them to the ship in the appropriate places according to the reference photographs that we were given. And I thought, they came out pretty good, and I was really impressed with how easy that it was to get these things into place. And I made enough of these decals to where if I screwed up, they were easy to remove, very easy to remove, and I had plenty more to try again to make sure it got into position. So this we're looking at the bottom of my Millennium Falcon model, and you can see some of those orange circles on the model that I used there for dry rub, with the dry rub decals. Now with the Corsac design, I'm going to do something similar. As you can see, there's some markings here that are unique to this ship. So I can't just go out and get these things, so I decided I was going to go ahead and design these up. And instead of paying I wouldn't say outrageous prices of the dry rub process from the manufacturer, I wanted to give it a shot. I did a little bit of research and saw that there is a DIY, do-it-yourself type of system out there that made by Pulsar Professional FX that enables you to make your own decals. So I'm going to give that a try. And once I begin that process, I will share with you the steps and procedures to make that happen. I was very impressed with the Millennium Falcon details that they gave, and it had a very professional looking finish, professional looking result. And I'd like to try it. I'd like to see if this will work, and if it does, I'll continue to use it for future projects as well. And that about wraps it up. If any of you have any questions about that, just drop me a comment in the comment section. And in the meantime, take care, and we'll see you in about a week.